Okay, I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mr. McAndrew,
Present.
Dr. Rothchild,
Here.
Mr. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Gaughan.
Here. Thank you. Mrs. Reed?
The purpose of said public hearing is to hear testimony and discuss the following. File of the Council number 20, 2020, an ordinance approving and accepting the City of Scranton capital budget for the year 2021 pursuant to Section 904 of the city's Home Rule Charter.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Our City Clerk, Lori Reed, will now read into the record comment on this for this public hearing on the capital budget from the following residents: Thomas Coyne, Norma Jeffries, Faye Franis, and Marie Schumacher. Mrs. Reed.
Thank you. The first comment is from Mr. Tom Coyne regarding the capital budget. Just reviewed the 2021 budget and I see IT has a major overhaul planned. The budget states that a replacement of the city operating system is required due to technical support ending in 2021. The only operating system that ended support I can think of was Windows 7 in 2020. Internet Explorer ends at 12/31/2021, but that is not hardware, just installing another browser. Windows 7 ended its security patching as of January 14, 2020, but extended security updates are available for a fee for continued operation and patches through 2023. I support upgrades and security, but it has to be done in a reasonable long-term manner. A unified master data, what people have been making as an access database since 1992, may sound good, but having a database for all departments and service partners gives external access to privileged information to outside sources. Service partners should not have the access to a full database. The need is ever present to have an access-controlled intranet that can be protected and secured by VPN and credentials to specific remote machines running software to connect city resources. Intranet and internet need to be separated and non-linked. If I was running IT, I would back up financial and any critical data using a ZFS system. The next comment is from Mrs. Norma Jeffries. Information technology, projected cost, $936,000. Does this cost include someone on the city payroll to oversee the project? This is a big undertaking. Technical support for the city's current operating system will cease at the end of 2021. Will this technical support be bought in-house? Will the city have its own IT team that will oversee the upgrade and maintenance of the city operating platform? Line item number 65, city operating platform upgrade, $300,000. What services will be covered in this upgrade? It is my understanding that when an operating platform is upgraded, each desktop, laptop, etc., must also be upgraded to the new operating system. The $936,000 seems reasonable, however, not sure what the $300,000 referenced on line item number 65 covers. Training of personnel will be included in the general operating budget. Therefore, it appears that the cost associated with the training is not included in the $936,000. Department of Public Works, Department of Engineering, bridges, last line, roads and sidewalks will be included in the DPW general operating budget as a maintenance item unless new construction. Are the street signs and stop signs also included in the DPW general operating budget? The next comment is from Faye Franis. Number one, has the RACP grant request been submitted for the City Hall roof spire? And A, when will be know if received in the full amount? And B, how will any expenses not covered by the grant be covered? Number two, the Sorrente conversion seems to be moving beyond that approved by council in 2017. Council will be giving a de facto approval to this change by approving the capital budget, and I am concerned the city is biting off more than the taxpayers can afford. Number 3, how many riding mowers are being procured in 2021? Number 4, DPW Engineering Department includes a no funding for Merrifield until 2023, and this is purely unacceptable. These residents have been getting flooded for decades and need help now, not off into the future. Number 5, again, the DPW Engineering Department has the word design in the second column of the Kaiser Valley Merrifield line item. Why? The 4th comment, submitted by Marie Schumacher. May I say I was disappointed, very disappointed. Had I been counsel, I would have sent it back with a copy of Section 904 of the Home Rule Charter and requested an input that met the charter. First, the charter says it should be for 5 fiscal years, not 3. Next, with the probable exception of City Hall, the necessity was not clear. Estimated costs appear to be grabbed out of the air. Probably the worst example was budgeting $600,000 for parks with only a still to be delivered contractor recommendation. Estimated costs of operating and maintaining the facilities were not provided. Just the utility costs for the emergency service center concerns me. The required schedule is extremely vague. However, given that you have accepted the hodgepodge, I will share a few more specific thoughts. 2, are vehicles being replaced, traded in, and are the proceeds offsetting the cost of replacement? An asphalt paving and smaller roller is requested, but I see no request for equipment to tar above pave patches. Without the tar, water gets between the old and new asphalt and the pothole is back. Brush, tractor, and mower, new or replacement. The roadside brush along East Mountain Road and Route 307 between Route 81 and Linwood Avenue was not trimmed back this year as it has been in years past. Also, land bank vacant properties need to be maintained. I see 2 separate line items I might add and question for leaf vacuum trucks, but no street sweepers. Is our street sweeper inventory sufficient to keep sediment stormwater out of the stormwater drains? The DPW vehicle narrative states vehicles in need of replacement and fleet additions, and then provides a list but fails to distinguish between which are replacement and which are additions. There is no estimate for implementing a vehicle GPS system in 2021, despite the fact that a trial will be performed in the 4th quarter of this year. The flood control section states escrow accounts will be used for funding. Please identify the available escrow accounts and the balance in each and answer why this available funding has not been used to fix the Dewey-Jackson Street issue. It is stated the city will continue to access funding for parks such as the Pocket Park. Does this mean the city plans to invest more funds into the Pocket Park, or if the Pocket Park is being used as an example? $600,000 a year for 3 successive years is a significant amount without any backup other than McLean is doing a study. When will McLean deliver their recommendations? Based on the condition of the parks at this time, how does DPW access the parks needing to be addressed in 2021? And that concludes the comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. We will make sure that all of these questions are answered prior to final passage of the capital budget. And if there's no further business with the public hearing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Mr. Gaughan, I wanted to request a piece of information, but I don't know if it's appropriate at this time, that the 2017 Sorrenti piece that was approved by council, could I get a copy of that?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. The public hearing is adjourned. All right, we will go right into our caucus for tonight. So welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. I'll start off just by saying that if you look at the agenda tonight, obviously we have quite a few pieces of legislation. So I'm going to start off with Solicitor Hayes to give us an update on the seventh order piece that I think is pretty important, with the intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the city and the county in regards to delinquent real estate taxes. So Solicitor Hayes, can you start us off? Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Kevin, you're muted. That's okay.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone. In seventh order tonight for your consideration is a ordinance which would approve an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Scranton and Lackawanna County to allow the Lackawanna County Tax Claim Bureau to begin collecting delinquent taxes, real estate taxes on behalf of the city. Essentially, the Lackawanna County Tax Claim Bureau would step into the shoes which are currently occupied by NRS. We have conferred with the Tax Claim Bureau officials who seem to have a very well organized and efficient process and operating procedures in place to deal with delinquent taxes. The fee associated with the collection of delinquent taxes is statutorily set at 5%. The city administration, council, and the county have worked together in revising that agreement so that all parties I believe that it's adequately addresses all of our concerns, and would, if it's approved tonight, would take effect January 1, 2021. And they would begin collecting the delinquent taxes in the next calendar year. In addition, and do you want me to get into the refuse bills at this time?
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be
sure.
great.
So I know, so as you can see, there's a memo that I provided which requested certain revisions to the intergovernmental agreement, which initially proposed by the county. The county has indicated that those proposed revisions are acceptable. Essentially, all we did was make sure the correct dates were included in the agreement and provide for additional time in the event that the parties wanted to exit this agreement so that there could be a smoother transition to another collector of the taxes, or a collector of the delinquent taxes. This afternoon, or I'm sorry, this morning, President Gaughan, myself, the mayor, the business administrator, the treasurer, Solicitor O'Brien participated in a telephone conference or virtual meeting with Joe Joyce, who's the director of the Tax Claim Bureau for the county, as well as Frank Ruggiero, who is the solicitor for the Board of Commissioners. The topic of discussion was whether the county would be in a position to begin collecting the delinquent refuse bills on behalf of the city effective next year. They indicated that as long as the lien information was provided to them by the end of August of 2021, that they could include those fees in a upset tax sale, which they have the ability to do under the real estate tax sales law. The state real estate tax law enables each county to create a tax claim bureau, and they have certain mechanisms available to them to perform tax sales. So they effectively could do that starting next year. The question we have right now is from an operational standpoint, whether the city can transfer that information over to the county in order for them to do this starting in 2021. With that said, the business administrator, Carl Deely, and the treasurer, Mary Jo Sheridan, are going to explore that and report back to everyone to see whether they believe that the delinquent taxes or delinquent refuse bills could start being collected by the county next year. I think they're going to have to consult with Bill Fox, the tax collector. And one of the issues that they have to determine is whether we have sufficient time to include the garbage fee on the real estate taxes, which would go out in the first quarter of 2021. So they promised to report back to council and the county within short order. And at that point in time, if they determine that it's possible to begin transferring the delinquent tax or garbage fees over to the county, then Joe O'Brien and I will have to draft some legislation for council's consideration to effectuate that change. But the good news is that everybody seems committed to making that transfer possible. Obviously, council will have to formally approve that, and it seems that it is a viable option for everyone effective next year.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Solicitor Hayes or any questions in general on that piece of legislation, 7A? No? Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Lori, do you have anything for the good of the order?
I do not. Just item 7A. There'll be a motion by Councilman Donahue.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just have a few things on agenda items. I do have some questions. This is quite a few pieces of legislation on the agenda, and I'll wait till the regular meeting to go through them. I was communicating with Lori just on some typographical issues with some of the legislation and some things that I think we would require further information in the different pieces of legislation. Other than that, I'll go around the room now and we'll see if anybody has any questions on the agenda or anything for the good of the order. So, Councilman Donahue, do you have anything you want to add?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Councilman McAndrew, do you have anything?
I'm okay. Thanks, Bill.
Dr. Rothchild, do you have anything?
I think I'm good too. I'll talk a little bit more in fifth order about one of the pieces of legislation that has to do with the parking for the USPS building. I think it's 5E. So I'll explain a little bit about where that came from since I was dealing with the complaint from the workers over at USPS.
Okay, great. And Councilman Schuster, do you have anything?
No, I think we got a lot of good questions today in public comment and also on the hearing. And I think that you covered it, that those questions will be, the budget questions will be answered before the passage of the budget. So I think you covered that one for me.
Okay, great. I did just want to add two things. I was in contact, I mentioned last week about the RFP for the Kaiser Valley, the stormwater runoff. I know there's a lot of interest on council about that and in that neighborhood. So I was told by both the DPW director and the law department or the business administrator rather, that will be coming down to us. They're just tweaking some things and there were some different questions being volleyed back and forth, but those are being addressed and that should be out potentially by the end of the week. I also asked about OECD projects and an update on the CDBG portion of those projects that were funded through the 2020 action plan. We did receive a detailed response from the OECD director, so that is going to be placed in third order for next week, because I think it'd be beneficial for the public to see that. Kevin, if you can just check, we still have not received legislation yet to approve the acting fire chief. That's been a couple months now that's been in place, and also the city treasurer. Just double check on that. We have to approve those too.
Councilman Gaughan.
In the fire and the police chief, right?
Yeah. Sorry, Lori. What did you say?
I don't want to interrupt. Excuse me.
Oh, that's okay.
I expect 3 appointments to be submitted. They were finalized today, and I expect them to be submitted first thing in the morning, and you'll see those on your agenda for next week.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Let's see. What else do I have here? Oh, Lori, did we get a date? And I thought I saw this in an email, but I want to make sure. Did we get a date yet when the administration is going to meet with us in caucus to discuss the financial projections?
I think Mr. Dilly responded the 29th. I think it was the 29th.
Okay, that's
It
great.
was, I believe it is the 29th.
Okay, thank you. So just so the public knows, we will be meeting with the business administrator on September 29th in a public caucus to give us a similar update as they did back in June on, where we stand financially heading into the 2021, and then, the effects of the pandemic on our budget. So that will be good to get that update. And I think also on top of that, I think they're going to discuss blight in that caucus as well. Okay, I think that's all I have. There's some other issues that I'll save for the regular meeting. Does anybody have anything else before we wrap the caucus up for tonight?
Bill, I circulated the proposed resolution with regard to that liquefied natural gas facility and overland transport. If any council members have any comments or requested anyone or want any revisions, just let me know prior to, I guess, Thursday.
Okay, great. Thank
I
you.
just have a quick question about that, Kevin. I thought it was is that at a standstill now or no? Not your resolution, but the actual process or the approval coming through?
So
maybe I wasn't clear on it.
So it was reported in the press that the Delaware River Basin Commission has tabled the issue, and hasn't denied the permit application for that facility that would be in Gibbstown, New Jersey, but has tabled it for now. I think they're requesting additional information. So it doesn't mean it's a moot issue. It still is it's still ripe for comments by the municipalities that are affected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else before we wrap it up? All right, we're going to adjourn this caucus, and we will be back at 6:30 to start our regular meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call this public meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away recently in our community. Let us also take a special moment of silence tonight for people in our community and throughout the world who are suffering or who have passed away from the coronavirus. May those who are sick receive the proper treatment and recover, and may their caregivers, families, and neighbors be shielded from the onslaught of this virus. Let us give solace to those who grieve the loss of their loved ones. Let us thank the doctors, nurses, researchers, and all medical professionals and first responders who seek to heal and help those affected and who put themselves at risk in the process. We continue to hope that their work may conquer this disease and restore communities to wholeness and health. Whether we are home or abroad, surrounded by many people suffering from this illness or only a few, let us stick together, endure together, mourn together, persist and prepare together, and in place of our anxiety, let us continue to hope and find peace. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Ms. Carrera, a roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mr. McAndrew,
Present?
Dr. Rothchild,
Here.
Mr. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Gaughan.
Here, thank you, Ms. Carrera. Mrs. Reed, can you please dispense with the reading of the minutes?
Thank you. Third order, 3A, memorandum received from City Council Solicitor Kevin Hayes Esquire, dated September 10, 2020, regarding revisions to agreement attached as Exhibit A to file of the Council number 21, 2020. 3B, fuel card analysis received from Office of the City Controller for the period July 24 through August 23, 2020. 3C, minutes of the Historical Architecture Review Board meeting held July 9, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I do. Okay, Friends of the Poor, Family to Family, and the Weinberg Food Bank will be doing another COVID-19 emergency drive-through food giveaway. This will be Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020, 2:30 to 5:30 at Scranton High, 63 Munchak Way, Scranton, PA. As always, all attendees must remain in their vehicle. Food bags will be placed directly in their vehicle. Zip code, number of children, adults, elderly, and household is required. I just want to say again, these three organizations have been a godsend to many during this pandemic since March. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
I just wanted to, I didn't say it last week, but last week we had Chief Carl Graziano retire from our Scranton Police Department, and I wanted to thank him for his service and the great work that he's done with the police department over many years. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I have two announcements. The first, there are two openings on the ethics board. So we are going to accept letters of interest and resumes of those residents who are interested in seeking an appointment to fill the two vacant seats on the ethics board. There are, the first opening expires on August 31st, 2002. So you will fill the remainder of that term until August 31st, 2022, excuse me. And the second seat, for those who are interested, you'll fill the remainder of the term, which will expire on August 31st, 2021. Members shall be a citizen of the United States, shall have been a resident of the city for at least 1 year prior to the appointment, shall be at least a minimum voting age at the time of appointment, and shall reside in the city of Scranton throughout the term of service as a board member. Letters of interest and resumes must be received in the office of the city clerk no later than Monday, September 21st, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. by emailing lreed@scrantonpa.gov or by U.S. mail to Office of the City Clerk, Municipal Building, 340 North Washington Avenue, 2nd floor, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18503. So you have until Monday, September 21st at 4:30 p.m. I want to thank Mr. Reddick, and I know we thanked Mrs. Sheridan for their service on the board. There still remains a lot of work to be done on the ethics board. I am pleased that we have gotten as far as we've gotten. As anybody knows, in dealing with government and boards, it sometimes is difficult to get things up and running. We're not where we want to be, but we've made some progress. We do need 2 members on this board, so I would encourage anybody in the city who's interested and would want to give up their time and make a commitment to the city. This board is so important, and we would really appreciate it. So we're looking for anyone who's interested to submit those resumes and letters of interest. There was an ad in the paper on September 13th and September 15th, so today. Okay. The last announcement I'd like to make is just to congratulate 2 of my good friends, and I think almost everyone on council should know them, and a lot of people throughout the city know them, Leo and Rita D'Angelo. They're celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary. And there was a drive-by at their house this past weekend. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but Mr. and Mrs. D'Angelo run LaSalle's, the Image Makers over in South Scranton. They sell suits, but more importantly, they just extend their friendship to so many people throughout the city. I don't know anybody better than Leo and Rita D'Angelo. They would do anything for anyone in the community, and they're good friends of mine. I haven't seen them in a long time because of the pandemic, but I just wanted to wish them a happy 70th wedding anniversary. And that's all I have. Mrs. Reed?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Will someone please make a motion to accept public comment from the following citizens: Thomas Coyne, Bev Barros, Patricia Nestor, Norma Jeffries, Faye Franis, and Marie Schumacher.
I'll make a motion for public comment.
We have a motion on the floor on the question. Or I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second.
There's been a second on the question. On the question, I'm going to ask now our city clerk to read those comments received from members of the public into the record. Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. The first comment is from Mr. Tom Coyne. We are looking at making the trash fee that is not a tax be collected as a tax. Interesting. The reason it was not a tax is because it was supposed to be only for payment of trash collection. And as of May, the city has replied to me, it has no idea of the cost to collect trash as it does not have the DPW data. Maybe if the trash fee was put into a separate fund isolated from the general revenue and used only pay for the DPW services, this isolated fund from the general fund would show the numbers better. From the newspaper, U.S. District Judge Malachi Mannion agreed with federal prosecutors that Courtright should be held responsible for more than $2.9 million in profits the former Northeast Revenue Service earned from its city contract to collect delinquent property and garbage fees. Ultimately, Mannion decided Courtright is on the hook for the gross profits Northeast Revenue Service made between 2015 through June 30, 2019, $2.9 million, citing prior court rulings. So the residents were charged $2.9 million in extra fees. Any plans on looking at how to make the citizens whole? I expect not, because the city fraudulently contract based on a bribe will be enforced because it is too bothersome to recover non-city funds. We are now looking to transfer the trash fee, not a tax, to the county, and instead of a 15% on delinquent fees, getting charged a 5% fee on everything. Why is the city incapable of conducting business itself? On a $7.8 million trash fee, 5% is handing over $380,000 to the county versus just delinquent trash fees to former Northeast Revenue. Is there not a way the city could hire and collect its own trash fees? Just the 5% or $380,000 a year would fund that action alone. As for landlords who are not registered, not paying trash fees, why not, instead of not collecting the trash, have license and inspection record the number of bags placed outside and target and collect it as illegal dumping? The city is not required to collect trash from homes that have not paid trash fees. Fine them for every bag dumped and have the trash collected as usual. I would restrict this rollout to people who are in multi-unit home and have at least 2 years delinquent. The $600 plus late fee and the number of bags would cover the cost of a L&E person doing targeted enforcement. The collecting protects the health and safety. The fine provides a tool beyond just collecting an overdue fee that can just be paid late. This allows a second penalty, a continuing and compounding fine for dumping, shows the landlord's noncompliance, and furthers civil action by unpaid dumping fines. Violation of Section 360-11 dumping allows a $25 fine per occurrence. Section 360-9 even allows the city to visit the house the day prior, and it is considered a violation each day the violation continues. Section 360-12 puts the real teeth in if ignored. Upon conviction before the magisterial district judge, be ordered to pay a fine of not less than $150 and not more than $1,000 on each offense, or be imprisoned no more than 90 days or both. On to 5D on the agenda, the license plate reader. I find it disingenuous that the application calls for specific information and metrics that has been intentionally not supplied. In the form, questions are asked for supplying information. What are the benefits downside? How does it relate to city mission priority? Initial cost is clear, but no statement of benefits, initial and ongoing. As the city has 2 in use already, we should have yearly metrics of number of scans, number of hits, revenue collected, type of hit, criminal activity, or just a fine collecting tool. Data shows in other states that hits are in the 0.01% range, mostly emissions and registration violations. So 99.99% of data collected is tracking and surveillance of innocent people. Data retention policy, how long is it stored? Some states store it for 48 hours, others indefinitely. Is the data, like some other states, scrubbed and removing the plates of all non-hit target plates? Is the city required as part of the grant to upload, share the data? And even if not required, does the city upload the data to other parties outside the Scranton Police Department, including other agencies? If the funds require data sharing, can and will the local government scrub the data prior to upload, or are they required to supply the untouched files? First, I'm always disturbed by mass surveillance of citizens without cause. License plate readers have exploited a loophole in the law. Since the plate is visible in public, it is not private, and most police and government have been moving to third-party purchasing of data to avoid the issue of government surveillance and illegal tracking. The same spurious argument applied elsewhere, used in a similar context, is the equal of defending stalking, as you are visible in public, so I have a right to follow you everywhere you go and record everything you do. This is not by single drive-by, but collected aggregate data. Automatic license plate readers have the potential to create permanent records of virtually everywhere any of us have driven, radically transforming the consequences of leaving home to pursue private life and opening up many opportunities for abuse. The tracking of people's locations constitutes a significant invasion of privacy, which can reveal many things about their lives, such as what friends, doctors, protests, political events, or churches a person may visit. In our society, it is a core principle that the government does not invade people's privacy and collect information about citizens' innocent activities just in case they do something wrong. Clear regulations must be put in place to keep the government from tracking our movements on a massive scale. I recommend reviewing the following ACLU PDF prior to considering approval and holding off on this until a proper public forum can be done to review the desires of the community. An email link will be provided in the minutes. Data collections without regulation is not ethical. It is unwarranted to install a GPS on a car. Police have to obtain a warrant and have reasonable cause. This is a cash grab and building a database to collect information without warrant on people's movements. The quote, "Those who would give us essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety," was said by Ben Franklin and still applies today. What you may not know is this quote was spoken in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Coyne. The second submission is from Ms. Bev DeBarros. Dear Council, will all of our polling places be ready for in-person voting? Will that information be available well before Election Day? That was really inconvenient to be told we had to go to the Globe building. About recycling plastics, which numbered items indicated in the triangle are we supposed to recycle? Thank you, Bev DeBarros. Number 3, submitted by Patricia Nestor regarding the Mayor's Volunteer Corps. Cleaning up parks, helping people, doing things in an organized manner, park ambassadors, making this political with the mayor's branding on everything. She's not well liked and people are not going to give her free advertising. Change the name to Scranton Volunteer Corps. Better yet would be to work through already established neighborhood associations. The park ambassadors could stop at parks in their neighborhood before monthly meetings for assessment and take pictures to be included in group meetings. Increase and strengthen neighborhood associations. Each neighborhood association should have a Facebook, social media group with information about when, where meetings. Meeting minutes and videos available for people who can't make it to meetings. That would be me. My disabilities keep me from going, but I am still interested. Other people can't go because of work, kids, etc. That's all. I'm bringing this up because our mayor loves marketing, playing with hashtags, graphics, branding. My son is 22 and has no problem spending a nice day indoors. I wouldn't unplug him and send him to the park wearing a t-shirt with her branding and give her free political advertisement. Nope, nope, nope. This is about cleaning up the parks. This is about cleaning up Scranton. This isn't about her. Remove her branding, please. Does anyone watch Columbo on MeTV Sunday nights? I feel like him. Oh yeah, one more thing. The mayor did city hall pop-ups all over the city. I haven't been to any, but Lips were involved. They should give out applications for people to license their dogs since they are out at parks and places dogs go walking. If the whole process was online, they could do it right there with a credit debit card. Online, you can print out an application and send in the mail, but you can't just do the process online. A lot of people don't have printers or are perpetually out of ink. You're missing out on revenue. I think $35 per dog a year is way too high, though. Areas around Scranton are $5, $10. People would be more willing to pay that instead of being a scofflaw. Have a good night, Patricia Nestor. The number 4 comment is from Norma Jeffries regarding NDC presentation in January 2020 parking at kiosk system. On page 12 of the presentation made by NDC ABM, it lists the following features of the smart meter parking system: state-of-the-art technology, touchscreen capability, coins, credit cards, and mobile payment, easy to use and maintain. Guess it should be ease of use and maintain. Enhanced enforcement, pay by plate. My concerns: number 1, I received a meter violation which cost me $35, which is the new rate for 2020. However, why the $3 processing fee? On page 16, under column 2020 new rate for meter overtime, it states $35. No mention is made of the processing fee. Shouldn't the processing fee be the cost of doing business, and why should we be charged that additional fee? Number 2, as listed above, page 12 states that coins can be used in the meters. That has not been the case with me. The meters on Washington Avenue require the use of a credit card. It would not take my quarters. Again, on page 16, under on-street parking, the fee is $1.50 for up to an hour, which seems excessive when you are just going into a facility to pick up lunch. Hopefully, an adjustment can be made to these rates since so many restaurants in the city offer curbside pickup. Respectfully submitted, Norma Jeffries. Comment number 5, submitted by Faye Franis. Number 1, Mr. Gaughan, last week's meeting, you stated that ECTV received money from Comcast, but that was a grant, not money given to ECTV from the Comcast franchise fee that comes into the city 4 times a year, which is considerable amount. Have you gone back to the controller and asked him to tell you how much money ECTV has received from the Comcast franchise fee each year? If so, what did he say? If you did not ask, will you do so this week for sure? Number 2, Mr. Gaughan, have you asked anyone why Scranton Tomorrow has received money from the Comcast franchise fee, and how much have they received? Number 3, could council please get an accounting of how Scranton Tomorrow spends all of the thousands of dollars the city has given them, plus any money they receive from the Comcast franchise fee and the money the University of Scranton has directed to them in lieu of taxes? Comment on question 3. It is quite possible that when money is given to a city in lieu of taxes, it must go into the operating budget, not be dictated to the city as to where they want their money to go, as did the University of Scranton when they stated half of their money they gave was to go to Scranton Tomorrow. So I suggest you check with your lawyers to examine that law and make sure if and when the university gives money again in lieu of taxes, it goes into the operating budget. I know I have addressed these questions previously, but I have not received any replies to any of them. Thus, I must ask again. Also, if council decides to have people come into a caucus to go over the rules on collecting rental registration fees and what happens to the buildings if they do not pay, please make sure you ask them to answers to questions you can present to them before they come in. This way, it won't be another time when they say, we will check into that and get back to you. We need to know state laws in regards to many questions you may ask. Submitted by Faye Franis. And the last comment was submitted by Marie Schumacher as follows. Does the city have a policy on use of gas cars? Did the city check with all city-based institutions of higher learning to inquire whether or not they required students and those accompanying them on moving in to prove they were COVID-19 negative within 5 days of going on campus? If so, what were the answers? Soon we will return to council chamber for meetings, 2021 budget hearings, and other special events as council replace the podium and visitor table microphones so all may hear. If not, please get this done before the budget hearings begin. Thank you. Cold chain. Grass went from a PA company to a Delaware corporation. Does this impact the city revenue in any way? I hope you read Joan Hodawanit's letter to the editor in last Sunday's Times and will ensure cities' labor contracts are put on the website. Boscovs will be holding their Friends Helping Friends next month, 14 and 15 October. Please encourage nonprofits to register and come out to shop and save on their purchases and raise funds for the nonprofit they mentioned during checkout. Again, submitted by Marie Schumacher, and that concludes the submitted comments, Councilman Gaughan.
Okay, thank you. I just want to check through really quick some of the answers to these that I know offhand, and then the rest will submit to the administration to get answered, hopefully prior to next week. So the first from Mr. Coyne, he asked about agenda item 5D, the license plate reader legislation. What are the benefits and the downside? There is a pretty extensive program narrative. I'm not going to go through the whole thing that explains the purpose for the police department going for this legislation. So I think that would answer what are the benefits to that program. There's Mr. Coyne raises other issues and points here and questions about how the city would be able to upload and share the data and data sharing regarding this program. I don't know the answers to those, but certainly we will inquire with the police department. Bev DeBarro submitted a couple questions. Will all of our polling places be ready for in-person voting? I believe that they will be, but that would be a question for the Lackawanna County Department of Elections. I think there was an issue for the primary, one or two issues there, but I think they've been taken care of. With the question about recycling, which numbered items indicated in the triangle are we supposed to recycle? Kyle, do you know that off the top of your head? I can't, I'm drawing a blank.
Actually, I was searching for it when I saw that come in today. I have it somewhere. I just don't know exactly which ones they are. I believe it's 1 through 3, but
Okay.
I'm not positive.
Okay, so we'll follow up for Bev DeBarros on that.
Mr. Gaughan,
Sure.
I did send an email over to Mrs. DeBarros before the meeting of the polling places and the changes in location.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that takes care of that. Patricia Nestor, there's really no questions in here, just comments, but the one comment about making the meeting minutes and videos available for people who can't make it to the, I'm assuming to the council meetings. Our meetings are posted on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and type in ECTV Scranton, you can find, I think, every council meeting going back to at least 2016 or 2015. And they're also televised live on YouTube and then live on ECTV. The minutes are located on scrantonpa.gov, and all of the public comments are entered into the official record. Ms. Franis's questions. So the question about ECTV receiving money from Comcast. So I did send I believe I sent the franchise agreement that was passed, I believe, back in 2015 to Ms. Franis. ECTV does receive grant money from that agreement. They don't receive anything else but that. So the question about that was grant money not given to ECTV from the Comcast franchise fee that comes into the city 4 times a year. If you look at the agreement, it's delineated right there, what money ECTV gets and the disbursements. So I might have misspoke a week or two ago, and Controller Murray sent me further information. The last payment to ECTV from the Comcast grant and the Comcast agreement was actually February 10th, 2020. And that's listed as the 3rd disbursement. She also asked why can anyone answer why Scranton Tomorrow has received money from the Comcast franchise fee and how much have they received? They do not receive any money from the Comcast franchise fee agreement. It's only ECTV. Scranton Tomorrow does not receive any funding. Could we get an accounting of how Scranton Tomorrow spends all the thousands of dollars the city's given them? That is detailed in the budget. So anytime that the city, as far as I know, gave any money or allocated any money to Scranton Tomorrow, that was detailed in the budget narrative. We can follow up with Leslie Collins from Scranton Tomorrow for a more detailed accounting of that. But I think the details are in the budget. And again, they don't receive any money from the Comcast franchise fee. Then there's another question from Ms. Franis about the pilot payments. So the money that the city gets, for example, from the University of Scranton in lieu of taxes, and that it must go into the operating budget, not to be dictated to the city by the University of Scranton. A few years ago was actually, I think this was a good idea, instead of the University of Scranton just giving the city a blank check, or not a blank check, but giving the city a check in lieu of taxes to go into the operating budget, it was decided between the city and the university, here's what we're going to spend that money on. So if you're giving us a check for $250,000 in lieu of taxes, rather than it just go into the budget, we're going to spend it on parks. We're going to spend it, I can't remember off the top of my head what it's been spent on, but it's for a specific use. So it doesn't just go into the operating budget. There's a rhyme and a reason for that. And I think I answered most of the questions there. Mrs. Jeffrey's questions, I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll follow up with NDC and ABM to take care of that. And Ms. Schumacher, does the city have a policy on use of gas cards? I think it's gas cards, not gas cars. I don't know for sure if that's a typo, but there is a policy for that. There was one created by Mayor Evans, and I think it was tweaked by this administration, and we can get Ms. Schumacher a copy of that policy. Also, asked a question about when we eventually return to council chambers, did we replace the podium and visitor table microphones so all may hear? We were looking at the acoustics of council chambers. As everyone knows, it's a little awkward in there when you're listening to somebody at the podium. Once the pandemic happened, that project had stalled. So we did not take that up again yet, but we will hopefully prior to getting back into council chambers. But Mrs. Reed and I and the rest of council will have a conversation about that. Then there's other questions here. I'm not positive of the answers, so we'll follow up. Anybody else on the question? All those in favor of accepting public comment signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion to accept public comment passes. Mrs. Reed?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Councilman Schuster, any motions or comments tonight?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councilman McAndrew, any motions or comments?
I do. As chairman of the Public Safety Committee, I would like to wish Sergeant Steve Marino of the Scranton Police Department, wish him, best wishes on his retirement from law enforcement for a total of 39 years. That's awesome. Thank you, sir, for your service. I would also like to wish, again, Chief Carl Graziano, a class act of the city on his endeavors. I know he's not quite retiring yet, but I'd like to thank him for his devoted service to the city. I would also like to congratulate Interim Chief Nemetka, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, on his new position, and looking forward to working with him, and best of luck. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, I just want to make one comment on a piece of legislation that we have on our agenda for tonight, and that's 5E, which will designate a loading and unloading zone in front of the Postal Service office that's on Lackawanna Avenue at the Steamtown building. And That was something that started back in July. One of the workers came to me and explained that they were having an issue, this issue of safety where they were supposed to have a loading zone, but people were often parking in it. And so then they were forced to have to double park in order to, make their deliveries to that office or pickups. And there's 3 different times of day that you'll see there in that legislation. That's when they have their loading and unloading time. So the sign would be a bit more specific and detailed and hopefully more obvious to people so that they avoid parking during those times to make their jobs and lives a little bit easier at the post office.
Thank you, Dr. Rothschild. Councilman Donahue, any motions or comments?
I just have 2 comments, just to really just 2 questions for the administration. If Mrs. Reed could pass them along. One is, could we get from the administration a timeline on when the McLean Associates park assessment will be completed? And also, would we be able to ask the administration for an update on their internal assessment of the LIPS department that was supposed to be done in place of Barry Isett and Associates coming in and doing the LIPS assessment? And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Donahue. All right, thank you, everyone. I just have a few comments. As I mentioned in the caucus, if anybody was here for that, the RFP that many people are interested in for to deal with and to really take a look from an engineering perspective at the Kaiser Valley stormwater runoff issues, that is going to be coming out soon, from what I understand in talking with the DPW director and the law department. I did meet with the DPW director out in Fawnwood with neighbors who live on Whitetail Drive about some flooding issues. So that is an issue that is being looked at and hopefully will be addressed soon, because there's a lot of issues out there with that and people's homes who are getting damaged. The second thing I wanted to mention was just in terms of requests that I've received, 528 Birch Street. This is a vacant lot that's been overgrown now for quite some time. Neighbors have complained to me. There's been no action just yet, as far as I can see. So we did send that into the Licensing and Inspections Department. Also received several issues in Southside from a resident, 1603 Pittston Avenue, a roof collapse next to 430 Pittston Avenue, 2208 Pittston Avenue. There's issues in the 2900 block of Cedar Avenue. So we did send that. I think this is the second time that we sent those to the Licensing and Inspections Department. I also met this weekend with several residents in the 900 block of Prescott Avenue. They're having issues with the blight and issues with the Hindu temple up at 933 Prescott Avenue. So I did take down notes about the situation and forwarded those to the mayor and requested a meeting with the Licensing and Inspections Director and the city planner. I won't go through all the issues because there's just too many to go through tonight, but I did put those in writing, and hopefully we get that meeting soon and the residents can move forward with their lives, because it's being interrupted daily because of those issues. Also, Mrs. Reed, I'd like to know if we can get from the administration a status of the Novembrino Pool Complex project. I'd like to see at this point a total cost of the project to date versus what the original budget was for that project. I'd also like to know how many change orders have been issued by the contractor and what the total amount of the change orders were. So I'd like details on that. Also, I do know that the administration has an internship program in the city, which I think is fantastic. I would like to know if the city is fronting the cost at all, or any costs associated with the internship program. It's my understanding that most of the cost is being covered by, I think, the state, but I'm not positive. So if we could forward that question on to the mayor, just on how that program works and how it's funded. We have been asking for an update on the sale of receivables and when that RFP will go out. That is roughly $1.5 million at stake in the budget. Councilman Donahue and I have been told that that is going out hopefully soon. I just still want to say for the record that I am concerned, to say the least. I hope that this works out, but I feel like we may have waited too long. I hope that I'm wrong on that, but I think that we're cutting it really, really close. If somehow the deal falls through, the RFP doesn't go out, or it goes out and it doesn't materialize for whatever reason, that's $1.5 million hole in the budget, along with the other issues that we have. So that's a concern of mine. Also, I asked within the last few weeks for an update on the sign program. A few years ago, council had approved a contract with KS Engineering, and I know Mrs. Jeffries is always interested in this, so hopefully she's watching. And at that time, the rationale behind entering into a contract with this company was so that they would go around the city and they would create a database of all of the signs in the city: stop signs, children at play signs, street signs, so on and so forth. They have the technology to do it. So we really bought that technology. And I had asked for an update on the data that we have received so far from that program, how many signs have been replaced, how many signs are still outstanding that need to be replaced. And Director Preamble sent me that data today. I looked through it. It's the latest data that field data that was recorded from the DPW staff. So I just wanted to update everyone. Currently, since this program was launched, 337 existing signs have been replaced throughout the city. 12 existing signs were removed. There are 2,040 signs that are considered in poor condition that need to be replaced. So these are stop signs, street signs, and other signs throughout the city. So there remains a lot of work to be done. Director Preamble reported to me that the DPW is proceeding with a multimodal transportation grant opportunity through DCED to secure funding to contract the remaining signs requiring replacement. So at this point, they're exploring funding avenues while the department maintains the in-house initiative to reduce the balance that remaining. And just so everyone knows, we only have 2 employees in that sign department, and they do a very, very good job. And they have made a dent in this on top of everything else that they do and that they're responsible for. But there does remain the issue that there are quite a few signs in neighborhoods throughout the city which are faded, which are poor, which are not reflective at night. So those do have to be replaced. And I was happy to hear that there's a process and a program in place to do that. And that's all I have this week. Mrs. Reed.
Thank you. 5B for introduction and ordinance amending file of the council number 4, 2020, entitled authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the city of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the 5-year consolidated plan, analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and annual action plan for the period beginning January 1, 2020 by amending the 2020 action plan by programming $1,649,621 in CDBG CV funds made available by the CARES Act and programming $1,435,629 in ESG CV funds made available by the CARES Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved. I'm sorry.
Second.
Okay, thank you. On the question? On the question, this is obviously very important funding that the city is receiving from the federal government through the CARES Act. I went through and looked at this legislation, and there was a few things that I just want to point out. Exhibit A in the legislation, it looks like it's missing a second page. It's hard to tell. The 2 pages don't jive together. Then there's another letter where it doesn't look like the first and second page match up. So it's probably just an error, a clerical error on the administration's part, but I just wanted to try to clear that up. The figures in the spreadsheet, we've received this before for whatever reason, and maybe it was a scanning issue, I don't know. And I've discussed this with Mrs. Reed. It's very hard to read some of the figures and some of the words and statements on the spreadsheet. So I would ask before final passage that we receive a spreadsheet that is legible, that we can read. I also wanted to know if there's a deadline on when this money has to be spent. So is there a timing? Because in the past, I know there's been timeliness issues with different funding. So I'm wondering if there's any timeline on this. And also, I would like to know who's in charge of administering the ESG program at this point. I have to say that I'm a little concerned. I do know in talking with the administration in the past few months that for whatever reason, they eliminated a position of emergency solutions grant public service specialist in OECD. And it's my understanding that that person was in charge of administering programs that you would see on the spreadsheet. Now that we're getting a very large amount of money from the federal government, what individual in OECD is going to be administering this program? That would be a concern of mine since the ESG and public service specialist position has been eliminated. And I'd also like to get a further explanation as to, now that employees are back in City Hall or working from home or whatever, on why exactly that position was eliminated, and who's going to be taking up this work now. And that's all I have on 5B. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction and ordinance, amending file of the council number 4, 2020, entitled authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the city of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the 5-year consolidated plan, analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and annual action plan for the period beginning January 1, 2020, by amending the 2020 action plan by utilizing $80,000 under CDBG.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Second.
Thank you. On the question? On the question, this was a request from UNC to move this money from the Project Hope, the camp that they have, which is an outstanding program, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they had to cancel that this year. So they're going to move this money to the UNC Certified Housing Counselor, which makes sense to me. The only comment that I would have on this is that just like in 5B, the spreadsheets that were provided are very difficult to read. So before final passage, if Mrs. Reed, if we can get spreadsheets that are legible, I would appreciate that. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, on the question, Bill, could we add to your request about, is there a counselor already present, or will they be hiring a counselor, and then this money, will that be funding that position for 1 year?
I believe that this is just for the, I think it's just for the program, but we can double check on that. I'm not positive, but I think it's just to fund the housing counseling program. But
yeah, that was a little unclear there from the information that came along with that.
Okay, yeah, we could double check before next week. Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Okay, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D for introduction. An ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the City of Scranton Police Department, and if successful, a grant agreement and accept funds related thereto through the BJA FY18 Edward Byrne Justice Assistant Grant Program, local solicitation in the amount of $18,638 to purchase an automated license plate reader.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, I think Mr. Coyne had a couple of good questions about this, including some of the, the past usages of this device and whether, I know this is grant money here, but maybe purchases were made in the past, and does the usage of this type of machine, I guess, pay for itself?
Okay. Yeah.
Is it worth the purchase, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I believe it is, just because if you look at the two things, we already have two that the police department uses, and I think anytime that you can multiply manpower with a data gathering tool like this in terms of the license plate reader, I think that's a good thing. In the backup, it states that the license plate reader will be used in investigations, location of suspects, wanted persons, and to me, most importantly, Amber Alerts. I think Mr. Coyne's questions, we can definitely inquire with the police department, but I'm going to be in favor of this legislation. I think, again, anytime you can multiply, put a multiplier out there in terms of eyes on the street with some of the things that we have going on in the city, I think that's a good thing. Anyone else on the question?
Yes, I'd just like to add that, like you said, we do already have two of these. This would just be an addition of a third one. In my past conversations with the SPD, it seems like this has been a really helpful and effective tool for them, and a way that they've been able to find suspects. I don't believe it's being used for any other type of invasion of privacy. If I did, I would not be in favor of this, but I do feel comfortable because the use has been beneficial to date. So I think a third one will enable them to do even more.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E for introduction and ordinance authorizing the City of Scranton to establish parking restrictions for a loading, unloading zone from 9:15 to 9:45 a.m., 1 o'clock p.m. to 1:30 p.m., and 6:30 p.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. along 300 Lackawanna Avenue between Penn Avenue and Wyoming Avenue for the United States Postal Service.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. On the question?
On the question, I just wanted to add to what I had mentioned earlier. I just forgot that I wanted to thank the people who come together for this. So it was first sent to SPD, and then the city engineer also checked out the situation, and from there it went to the law department, and we were trying to get it on our agenda prior to the legislative break in August, and I think I might have mentioned that in the past, but it didn't happen. So I'm glad that now we have received this legislation and that we can get it introduced tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5F for introduction and ordinance amending file of the council number 27, 2018, entitled an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the City of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the period beginning January 1, 2019, by amending the 2019 action plan by utilizing $40,000 under the Home Investment Partnership Program for Homeowner Housing Rehabilitation Program.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I have two questions about this. So the Emergency Repair Housing Rehab Program was originally funded for $75,000 in the 2018 action plan and then $40,000 in the 2019 action plan, but it was never established. And now this legislation is authorizing it to be transferred to the homeowner rehab program. So two questions. Why wasn't the Emergency Repair Housing Rehab Program ever established? So what was the reason that it never came to fruition? And are there any other programs that were funded in the past 5 years that that got funding in the action plan, but were never established, or the funds have not been spent yet? Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5G for introduction and ordinance amending file of the council number 20, 2018, entitled an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the city of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the period beginning January 1, 2018, by amending the 2018 action plan by utilizing $75,000 under the Emergency Repair Housing Rehabilitation Home Investment Partnership Program for Homeowner Housing Rehabilitation Program.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5H for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials of the city of Scranton, upon the offer of conditional employment to the Scranton Police Department, to allow participation in the Act 120 program. Applicants who accept said offer will reimburse the city of Scranton on a pro rata basis if the employee terminates employment with the city of Scranton prior to 3 years.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
On the question? On the question, it was a suggestion made by Councilman McAndrew and myself to the mayor when we had first heard the news that the city was going to be picking up the cost of training, Act 120 training for potential incoming police officers. So Councilman McAndrew and I had asked several questions of the mayor. I just want to check through some of them. So one of the questions was there enough money in the police department budget to afford taking this cost on? And we did receive a response from the administration. They said that yes, as we have been and currently are budgeted for 147 police officers, in which any new hires, regardless of whether they're in the police academy or not, would count towards the authorized 147. In addition, the city will be reimbursed from the state 45% of the new officer's salary while he or she is attending the 919 hours of training at the police academy. There could potentially be overtime accrued while an officer is in training instead of being on the road. However, that cost depends upon several factors to include the time of year and how many non-Act 120 certified officers are hired and in training at the same time. They do not believe that any overtime would exceed 45% of each of the new officers' salaries while he or she is in the academy. We also asked what the total cost would be per individual to include the class, books, exam, etc. The current police academy tuition is $8,500. This includes tuition, supplies, and books. The city would be reimbursed $6,375 of that tuition for each new officer attending the academy. This difference could marginally add to the police training budget, absent a mass exodus from the department, and considering that Act 120 certified officers could possibly also be hired at the same time as non-certified officers. It is not expected that the city would send more than a few officers to the police academy each year. I'm going to be in favor of this because of that. According to the administration, most of the cost of this would be picked up by the state, I believe by the state. So 45% of the new officer's salary while he's attending the training at the police academy, and most of the cost of the tuition, the books, the class. So I do think that this makes sense in terms of expanding our base and expanding the opportunity to get more qualified applicants into the police department. And I want to thank Councilman McAndrew for helping me with this and making that suggestion that if we're going to pay for someone to take the classes and pay for their books and their tuition, that they're not going to turn around, get hired by the city, and then turn around and in a year take a job offer someplace else. If they do that, according to this legislation, they're going to have to pay the city back fully within the first year, and then it's on a decreasing scale from then on out. So, anyone else on the question?
So I just have one, I guess, question on that. So they don't technically become city employees until they actually graduate from the academy, correct?
I think they're city employees. I think they're hired. You could hire the employee and then they could take the class. That's my understanding of it. Solicitor Hayes, would you know that off the top of your head?
I mean, typically, the way it normally, I previously served as the solicitor to the Civil Service Commission, and the way it was traditionally arranged that was that no entry-level patrol applicant could even apply unless they had the Act 120 certification. So in other words, you weren't eligible unless you had Act 120 certification. This changes that, and I don't know for certain as to when they would become employees, but I could get between now and next week. I'll try to get clarification on that issue.
Thank you. I mean, because I agree with the thought behind this 100%. My only concern is, if they become employees and they get hurt at the academy, would they qualify for a disability pension?
Well, I know for the firefighters who go to the fire training at Harrisburg Area Community College, my understanding is that they are employees when they go there, and that if they get injured, they are covered by available programs for injured employees. So I will research that issue and report back to you certainly before next week.
Thank you.
Good question. Anyone else?
My understanding is they are hired first. The way I read it, they're hired first, and then they receive the certification. I'll be a yes for this only because our concerns and questions were addressed and they were incorporated into the process, along with President Gaughan. We really talked about this and made sure that this is done right and the city benefits instead of losing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5I for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the city of Scranton to the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program in the amount of $2,895,260 to repair the roof and facade of City Hall.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, just looking through this, I did have one question. It says that the city would be using the value of the building as a match for the project, and the building as it's appraised, the value is $3 million. Just curious to know how this exactly, how that works. I've never seen that done before. So I'll be looking for an explanation on that. And then I believe that Ms. Schumacher also had questions on the RACB process as well. So we'll get those answered. Anyone else on the question? Okay, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5J for introduction of resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, Center for Business Financing Grants Office for a multimodal transportation funds grant to be utilized for the Cedar Iron District reconstruction project in the amount of $1,546,449.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5J be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, just looking through this legislation, the Cedar Avenue, what has taken place on Cedar Avenue over the last decade or so in terms of the redevelopment there has been really outstanding. This project will connect the Cedar Avenue corridor with our downtown. Right now, if you're walking or biking or running, as we see more and more throughout the city, you're trying to get from Southside to downtown or any other part of the city, it at times is difficult. If you look in the backup or anyone's interested in the public and looking at some of the drawings and the graphics that what they're planning on doing, this project would transform that whole area down by the ironworks, Cedar Avenue to downtown. It would make such a huge difference, in my opinion. And as I was talking to somebody the other day, we're seeing more and more because of the Lackawanna Heritage Valley Authority's work on the trail. More biking, more running, more walking, especially with the pandemic. It seems like everyone is out, that the weather is nice. So this program would be a huge benefit to the businesses downtown, the businesses in that Cedar Avenue corridor, the people living in Southside and in the downtown. Overall, it's a great project. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5K for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application through the Pennsylvania Department of Economic and Community Development Greenway Trails and Recreation Program in the amount of $44,903.15 to be used for emergency repairs to the Davis Trail located in Naog Park, Scranton, Pennsylvania, including replacement of 2 wooden observation decks and repairs to safety rails.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5K be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Second.
Second. On the question? On the question, I just want to say briefly that as everybody knows, Naog Park is a major asset that we have in the city. And I have to give another plug to the Scranton Recreation Board, to our Parks and Recreation Department for the work, all the work that they've done up at Naog Park. I'm up there quite often with my children and my wife, just walking through the park, using the playground when the weather's nice, using the Davis Trail quite often as well. And these wooden observation decks and the safety rails are in desperate need of repair. So I'm glad to see that the administration and the Recreation Authority Board, by providing the match here, is really being proactive in trying to keep this park where it needs to be. And there's so many other improvements going on up there. It's really nice to see that we're keeping our assets and our parks up to where they need to be. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5L for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the city of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Blight Remediation Program in the amount of $297,219.84 to implement a two-phase blight remediation project, including demolition of city-owned structures in public parks and demolition of privately owned structures that have been deemed hazardous.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5L be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I have a few questions about this one as well. So this legislation, we're demolishing the city properties first. So Weston Field Bathhouse, Penn Ridge Pool Complex, and Connell Park Bathhouse, the concession stand, and the announcer tower. So what I would like to know is what, and I'm sorry if I missed this because I gave this a quick glance. What is the plan moving forward now, since we're demolishing the bathhouse at Connell Park, the concession stand, the announcer tower? Is there anything going up in place of that after we demolish it? What's the plan there? On page 15, I believe in looking at it that the timeline is off. It says the demolition would begin in June of 2020. I'm assuming that's 2021. I don't know, but the timeline seems to be way off there. So I did talk to Mrs. Reed about that. If we could get an updated timeline. And the other question I had, the private properties on here, I'll use one as an example that I've gotten so many calls about, is 2939 Bernie Avenue. That is a property that, like all the other ones listed, that has to come down as soon as possible. So I understand and I agree with them going for this grant money, but a question that I have is why can't we use the money that's already been budgeted for demolition? I checked with Controller Murray. There's $145,000 that we already have in the 2020 budget for demolition, at least for the private properties on here. I know that might not cover all of them, but we can pick off maybe some of the ones that are in worse condition to try to get that done this year right away, with 2939 Bernie Avenue being one of those that I think should come down immediately. So two questions. Do we plan on using this funding? How much money do we have total in our demolition budget, even from years prior? I know this is a question that's came up before in terms of, having money that's been left over, even in the OECD budget. So I'd like those questions answered prior to final passage of this legislation. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5M for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the city of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Flood Mitigation Program in the amount of $322,569 to assist in the acquisition and demolition of 3 properties in Scranton's west side, 2404 Jackson Street, Scranton, PA 18504, 120 North Merrifield Avenue, Scranton, PA 18504, and 122 North Merrifield Avenue, Scranton, PA 18504.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5M, oops, we're echoing here a little bit. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5M be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, these 3 properties here, I would imagine that the homeowners are in favor of this. Do we know if there's, well, can we request information information to see if there's any other properties or structures that are in the floodplain right in that area?
So yes, certainly.
And then if there's any like future plans to, spread this out into a larger area, or if it's just going to be contained within those properties?
Yes. Good questions. Anyone else? I just had two questions on this. It says in the legislation that eventually it's a city's goal to rebuild the floodplain and an adequate pump station for this area. So my question there would be, what does this look like? What would the plan for that be? What does that entail besides going for the grant money, which I agree with, and acquiring and demolishing these properties? Also, I know from a few years ago, and the administration answered this question, but it's escaping me. We did have money in either the 2018 or 2019 budget for the Kaiser Valley pumping station. So my question is, I know there's been money spent there. I believe there's been money put in there. What else has to be done to bring that pumping station into an adequate status? What is that going to cost? Do they have a timeline yet for that? Those are the questions that I would have, and I'd like those answered along with Councilman Schuster's before final passage. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5N for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the city of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Blight Remediation Program in the amount of $73,225 on behalf of West Scranton Community Development, Inc., to repair the roof and parking area of the property located at 310 North Main Avenue, as well as the closing costs to finalize the purchase of this building that will be used by West Scranton Community Development Incorporated.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5N be introduced into its proper committee.
Moved.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I just have to thank all of the board, the directors and board members of this group, the West Scranton Community Development Incorporated. If you look through this legislation, first of all, the work that they've already done for the youth in our community is really, it's just outstanding. That they would put in their own time, their own effort, take away from their own families to go out and provide an area for the youth of West Scranton in our city to have a place to go and play basketball, to have a place to go after school to do educational activities, help with homework, a game room, things like that. There's really not a lot of areas for children to do that like there used to be years and years ago in the city. So I support this legislation. And again, I want to thank all of the members who made this happen, and I wish them the best of luck. And again, I want to thank them. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption. File of the Council number 21, 2020, an ordinance authorizing the City of Scranton to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the County of Lackawanna and the County of Lackawanna Tax Claim Bureau, whereby the responsibility and right to collect delinquent real estate taxes from the City of Scranton shall be transferred from the City of Scranton to the Lackawanna County Tax Claim Bureau.
I make a
Thank you,
motion
Ms.
to amend.
Sorry, I jumped the
Sorry, I
gun.
make a motion to amend item 7A to incorporate the revisions to the proposed intergovernmental agreement attached as Exhibit A to the ordinance as outlined by Council Solicitor in his September 10th, 2020 memorandum to Council, which is included in third order of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
On the question? On the question, Solicitor Hayes, can you just speak to what we're doing here by amending this agreement?
Sure. It's minor revisions to the proposed intergovernmental agreement, which we've originally received a few weeks ago from the administration. Essentially, we're changing the dates to reflect the commencement of the services that would be provided by the Tax Claim Bureau. And in addition, we are allowing for additional time for a transition in the event that the parties determined that we were going to terminate this agreement. Specifically, there was a 30-day notice proposed. Council went back and asked for 60 days, and that was agreed to by the parties. So the revisions are outlined in the memo that is in third order, but they're very, very minor changes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion to amend item 7A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A as amended.
Second.
On the question? On the question, bottom line, I've talked about this now for the past 2 weeks and the past few years. This is a good deal for the city of Scranton and the taxpayers in the city of Scranton. I think last week I mentioned that in working with NRS, the city got, I think, 85 cents on every dollar that was collected. With the county, I think it works out to like 95 cents for every dollar that's collected. So it's clear that this is a good deal. The other thing that I'm really hopeful for in having a meeting today with members of the administration, Solicitor Hayes in the county, is that we're eventually going to hopefully be able to have the county collect our delinquent refuse fees. Again, it'll end up being a savings, an overall savings for the taxpayers and more revenue in our coffers, which is sorely needed. And we won't have to rely hopefully on a private company like we have in the past. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, I mean, this is great that the Tax Claim Bureau is going to replace NRS. First of all, I'm with you, Billy. This is long overdue. I'm also thrilled to hear tonight that everybody seems to be working towards this goal quicker than you might have thought maybe a week or two ago. So I agree with Solicitor Hayes and thank him for being part of this process. And I agree with him that this is a very viable option that I want to see sooner than later. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please, Ms. Guerrero.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A as amended, legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption. Resolution number 60, 2020, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to enter into a cooperation agreement with Lackawanna County for reimbursement for COVID-19 related expenses under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, Public Law 116-136, and more particularly grant monies made available through the COVID-19 County Relief Block Grant Program.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption. Resolution number 61, 2020, approving in accordance with section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, a plan of financing of the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority and declaring that it is desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the city of Scranton for the Scranton-Lackawanna Health and Welfare Authority to undertake a project for the Scranton Preparatory School.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, Resolution number 62, 2020, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Barry Isett and Associates Incorporated to provide engineering services for the city of Scranton 2020 roadway improvement project.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question? On the question, last week I asked for if there was a street list available of streets to be paved in the city for this project. The DPW director did get back to me and our city clerk, Lori Reed, and reported that process remains in development. So they're not ready yet to make that public. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting's adjourned. See everybody next week.
Well, good night.